As voters get ready to head to the polls, Quebec is shaping up to be anyone's game. In the 2008 federal election, Quebec voters gave a majority of the province's seats to the Bloc Québécois. In 2011, it was the New Democrats' turn, and in 2015, the Liberals, showing their unpredictability at the polls. So where do voters sit right now on Election Day? Joining us to break it all down is Daniel Weinstock with McGill University. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us on this very important day. Let's talk about the Bloc for a second. They hold 10 seats, 2 shy of holding official party status. The party has been gaining support after leader Yves-François Blanchet's performance in the French and English debates. How big of a threat is the Bloc to the Liberals, to the Conservatives, to the NDP in Quebec?
Well, I think the Bloc is looking to be, the party that's going to keep both the Conservatives and the Liberals out of majority territory. It's been a surprise, I think, for a lot of people. They were, more or less given up for dead. Nobody thought that they had much of a story that they could tell Quebecers to bring them back to the Bloc fold. And yet, they made a decision which I think turned out to be strategically very wise, which is to essentially hitch their wagon to the provincial government, which is very popular. The Coalition Avenir Québec is polling stratospherically still a year and some after the election. And in particular, in saying that they would be the federal defense for the secularism law, which, though it is very controversial in other parts of Canada and indeed in Quebec, is still very popular amongst Quebecers. And Monsieur Blanchet very early on made the decision that he would essentially tell Quebecers, look, I will stand up in Parliament and defend this bill against any possible challenge from the federal government.
All right, let's move on to pipelines. Strong opposition to pipelines in the province of Quebec. Blanchet claimed the Bloc was responsible for killing the Energy East pipeline that would have run through the province. Now, depending on where the federal leaders stand on pipelines, is that a determining factor on their success in Quebec today?
Well, it hasn't struck me as dominant an issue, quite frankly. And, there's a limit to the degree to which a party that is only running candidates in Quebec can really deliver on promises of that nature. So I think, it is a preference for most Quebecers. I think it has really played, the back seat to some of the more sort of identity-based policies that the Bloc has decided to run with. But again, they've already said that they would not join any coalition, either with the Conservatives or with the Liberals, that they would very much stand up for defending Quebec's interests. And so I think there's a limit to the degree to which they can realistically inflect policy on things like energy in any particular direction.
But let's talk about that for a moment, because there's the possibility, a very realistic possibility, of a minority government scenario, which would then lead to increased power for a kingmaker like Blanchet. So a vote for the Bloc in a minority situation, no longer a wasted vote. The argument there is moot, because he could hold a lot of sway, a lot of influence in a minority government.
That's right. I think he could. It really depends. I think we're looking at two possible either coalition or not quite coalition. One party supporting another for supply and policy and confidence. We're looking at an NDP Liberal potential alliance and a Conservative Bloc alliance. So I think that in the eventuality where the Conservatives ended up being the government that is asked to try to form a government, and this is another interesting part of this election, they may be so close that it could be that the Governor General is not going to turn to the party with the most seats to try to form a government the first. So it really depends on who ends up getting the first kick at the can, as it were, in forming government. If it were the Conservatives, then I think it does increase the amount of sway that the Bloc Québécois has. They have to be very careful, though. They can't be perceived to too great a degree to be trying to make federalism work. This is, after all, a sovereignist party, a party that has downplayed the sovereignist card over the course of the campaign. Indeed, just over the weekend, when both Mr. Scheer and Mr. Trudeau tried to play up fears of sovereignty, Monsieur Blanchet kind of poo-pooed them and said,
Daniel,
well,
unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. Daniel, I apologize for interrupting, but we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.